Have you heard the silent scream? Each of us have had events that created disempowering responses in our minds and body. For perspective, keep in mind your immediate survival responses got you through the original trauma alive and served a purpose. Now I'll show you how to calm your nervous system down so that these responses don't interfere with your everyday living. I want to share my heart with you in talking about what has been described as the silent scream, trauma. This podcast contains information about trauma, abuse, and healing that may not be suitable for everyone. It is especially suitable for survivors and the people who love and care about them. My goal is lofty. I want to save lives. If I can reach even one of you and show you some effective new techniques and change your perspectives, maybe you'll choose to live instead of ending it all and live well, not just survive. As I help you to heal your life, you can finally feel joy and even gratitude for your life. You can contribute to your families, your workplace, and community in ways that are meaningful to you, with the gifts and talents only you can share as a victor, not just a survivor. This benefits our entire society. I humbly implore you to let me help you with this process. No one will be cured in half an hour. But hold on, there are many resources here for you in this episode and on my websites and more in development. My vision is to create a framework for healing and growth so that no matter how severe your trauma has been, you can live the life that you deserve. I won't offer trite solutions. I'm going to show you some seriously helpful techniques that have helped me far more than talk therapy or counseling. I especially want to reach trauma survivors because even though this is not a subject generally covered in a podcast in this way, the way I'm presenting it, there are survivors listening to self-help programs that are discouraged at the ineffectiveness and how it doesn't seem to work for them. I'm Phoenix Alexander, and this episode is Turning Trauma into Triumph. And in this episode, you'll learn the beginning of my trauma breakthrough, the overpowering emotions most common to trauma survivors, and how to get out of them, about how I defied a gunman at the mall, and thought-filled therapy algorithms to get you out of trauma right now, how your postures affect your emotions, not the other way around, and about mental rehearsal with emotions so that you can program your mind for success. People who have been severely traumatized often have a disadvantage in the workplace and in life because their lives are so often chaotic and very painful until they find the right coping strategies and mental toughness tools to effectively help them resolve the trauma. Keep watching, and I'll show you immediate actions that you can use to get out of an alarm state or a fight or flight response and into a calmer state, and how to change your emotions from fear or anxiety into empowerment. Right here, right now, I want you to shift your perspective. Instead of thinking of yourself as hopelessly flawed by your circumstances and trauma, I want you to acknowledge that you are amazing. You are adaptable and resilient because you are still here and you haven't ended your life and you used your skills to survive. I'm Phoenix Alexander, professional speaker, transformation expert, and author. Welcome to my podcast, The Way of the Phoenix. This episode is Turning Trauma into Triumph. This episode is especially suitable for anyone who's experienced trauma, whether that's with a capital T, big trauma, or a little t. It's a little longer than my typical episode because I want you to experience positive change right now. I want to give you physical techniques that you can use immediately to change your feelings of trauma. There are scientifically proven techniques used with trauma survivors of ethnic cleansing and many others. That means it's very effective. And these are scientifically proven techniques, and you'll want to listen until the very end. So I just want to say I assume no liability for the techniques I show you to help you reach your potential. These are techniques I learned over the years through certification training and personal experience, and also in working with my coaching clients. I advise working with a mental health specialist to include them in the process of implementing what I share with you. Since I can't be with you to guide you through this process, use these techniques at your own risk. I'm an insider. I'm a survivor of surreal trauma and violence that was relentless and ongoing. I had to reach deep inside of me and empower the parts of me screaming for safety, love, and a shot at happiness. If I had not exercised this kind of mental toughness and learned to release the suffering and trauma, I would have died. If I'd not learned how to channel the inner strength inside of me, I would have died from secondary adrenal insufficiency, from someone trying to kill me. Yeah, that's happened. Or I might have just given up. One of the timeless truths found in my book called Turning Trials into Triumphs, The Way of the Phoenix is, there seems to be a direct correlation between the magnitude of your problems and your potential for greatness. I'm going to share an emotionally raw story because I know there are many others who have felt trapped by trauma and had little or no success in freeing yourself from the shame and terror it creates. I want to change that. I learned about a workshop to help trauma survivors get the trauma locked in their body out. The workshop was taught by Peter Levine, a psychologist. And I took the class hoping to have some personal resolution to my trauma and also to help others. What he taught was so compelling that while he spoke, I kept covering my mouth so that no one could see the involuntary purge that was rising up in me and trying to come out through my voice. I went home from the workshop the first night and vomited the entire night. I was shaking and dizzy. And the next morning I was totally unable to drive myself, so I had to get a ride so that I could get to class. When I got there, I took the instructor aside and explained what had been happening. And he asked, "Have you had a lot of trauma in your life?" I said, "Yes. I've had many times in my life be threatened by people that I loved and trusted who should have protected me, not threatened me." He asked if he could work with me in class so that the other students could see firsthand what it was like to work with someone who had been seriously traumatized. I really didn't want to. I felt anxiety rise up in my chest just thinking about dealing with a disclosure that big to total strangers about some of the most horrifyingly private details of my whole life. I didn't want to be the one that everyone was watching because it made me feel like I was just strange and different, which were pretty common feelings for me. But I agreed to let him work with me because the crisis was not going away without some intervention. He told me some things about trauma that resonated so profoundly in me that I have never forgotten them. He said, "Shame is the emotion that fills the void created by trauma." Let me say that again. Shame is the emotion that fills the void created by trauma. I knew this and felt this. As much as I could rationalize that the shame wasn't mine, but belonged to the perpetrators, it was always there, like a film over my eyes, my mind, and my very cells. I felt shame in all its bitterness and betrayal. I longed with everything in me to be free from its grasp. Does shame resonate in you? Peter explained that my severe reaction to the information we covered in class was terror, leaving my body through vomiting and dizziness. This felt true. Have you ever experienced this? It's terrifying to experience this reaction. Then he asked me questions about where I felt the trauma in my body. I felt it in my heart, which hurt and was beating fast and irregularly. I felt it in my head that was dizzy and my stomach that was nauseous. I felt it in my legs because I wanted to run away from the whole experience. He asked me, "Is there anything that you wanted to do when your life was being threatened but you couldn't?" I said, "Yes. I wanted to run away, but I was trapped and couldn't leave." He told me he would be with me while I imagined doing just that. I was worried that making up a fake outcome might make me go crazy. And I asked him if that could happen because you're denying reality. He said, "No. It gives your body relief and a change to the terror responses. It won't make you go crazy." He sat down beside me, and he put his hand over my heart. And this helped to provide a physical anchor to the present time so I wouldn't get lost in a flashback. And he told me, "Close your eyes and run." So I closed my eyes, and in my mind, I ran like hell away from all of the horror. And as I ran in my mind, my body started to react differently. My subconscious mind knew the exact images to invoke to help me heal. In my visualization, I was in nature, which is my healing place, not where the actual events occurred. Mentally, I ran until I was exhausted, and then I sat on a rock by a stream of water cascading powerfully down a mountain. And I rested there to catch my breath. My body had craved for a different outcome than the actual one that had held me in suspended terror for too long. Soon, in reality, my body began to calm down because of this powerful metaphor that I was acting out only in my mind. My mind and body were freed to relinquish the terror, and I was no longer captive to the trauma because the instructor taught me how to visualize the outcome the way I wanted and needed it to be, not exactly how it was. Did I forget the real event or how it played out because of the new visualized outcome? No. But I can think about it without vomiting and getting dizzy and shaking or feel like I'll have a heart attack now. Mission accomplished. And yep, I stayed sane. This simple technique of visualizing a different outcome while anchoring my body powerfully connected me to the terror locked in me and gave me a resolution that talk therapy with a counselor had never accomplished. It was totally empowering. I realized that the key to healing was to engage the mind and body together because they've spent too much time dissociated by the original trauma. Some ways this differs from other methods of visualization is that instead of visualizing something you want to have or you'd like to do, which usually does not have a lot of traumatic emotional energy attached to it, when you're reframing a traumatic event, it will have the emotions of the original traumatic event attached to it. This kind of visualization has the potential for extremely effective trauma resolution. Using touch as an anchor somewhere on the body can ground you to the present time so that you won't get lost in a flashback and feel like you're reliving the past. To me, the only similarities with standard visualization and this is that you're using images, the language of the subconscious mind, to create change. This was the beginning of my healing journey. It had such a profound effect on me that I've spent the last 3 decades studying and applying every method I could find to release more trauma. Multiple studies have shown that the mind does not distinguish between a real event and one imagined with detail and emotion. So be careful what you dwell on with your mind. Make what you think about helpful. Use your mind to desensitize you from triggers and heal your trauma. If you continue to revisit your trauma without visualizing or embodying a different outcome, as was often the case in talk therapy, the brain interprets it as being traumatized over and over again, not as a single traumatic event. Yes, talk therapy was very traumatic for me. When they'd ask me about it, and it happened over and over, they'd ask me about it, and I would just freeze, and I was shaking, and it was very traumatizing. So I decided that wasn't the route for me. So usually using visualization is a very powerful tool to improve performance and even change brain structure. The following studies and my own experience offers hope that trauma can be effectively resolved through visualization. Athletes who practice their events in their minds to overcome their areas of weakness in their performance reliably improve their skills. There was a prisoner of war, Major James Nesmith, who was held captive for 7 years in Vietnam, and he was a golfer. And in his mind, he practiced his golf game. Obviously, he couldn't practice it while imprisoned, and when he was freed, his game had actually improved. He cut 20 strokes off his average with just mental imagery, although obviously his body would have been emaciated from spending 7 years in a small cage. Another study showed how piano students who practiced piano only in their mind had improvement. It was a Harvard study of brain function, and they divided the students who had never played piano into 2 groups. One group actually played an exercise on the piano, and the other group only visualized playing the exercise, but did not actually even move their fingers or touch a piano. Before and after brain scans were done, and amazingly, at the end of the study, the visualization group had growth in the area of brain that controls finger movement without ever lifting a finger. The group that actually practiced had brain growth also. The Blue Angels, who are Navy pilots that perform astounding aerobatics in the air, really pushing the limits of what can be done with a plane, do visualization. They rehearse in their mind, sitting at a conference table and envisioning every move before they take to the skies. This helps them to perform their maneuvers with perfect precision and the most safety possible. So you can start experimenting with daily visualization while anchoring your body to the present as a powerful tool for healing trauma and overcoming stress. I shared my most painful trauma experiences with a friend of mine who had been tortured as a prisoner of war. And he said to me, "Phoenix, you've survived things I don't think I could have survived. You are the strongest person I know." I'll own that. In 1988, I was at the South Center Mall in Tukwila, Washington. And I'd enjoyed some shopping, and I was in my car and leaving the parking lot. I was at a 4-way stop, and I saw that the truck facing me to my left had 3 young men in it. And I noticed that the driver, who was slouched in the seat, had one hand on the steering wheel and the other hand out the window and had a gun pointing at my head. And the windows were rolled down because it was summer. And suddenly I'm in code red. My life was being threatened and I had to take action. Instantly, I was outraged. Instead of screaming or crying or begging, I looked at him directly and yelled, "What is your problem?" And he looked at me like I was crazy. And then he looked at his buddies, who also seemed pretty shocked. And then he drove on. I believe I didn't die that day because I didn't do what he expected. I was unarmed and used my voice to show my fighting spirit. I refused to be intimidated. I would rather live or die on my own terms than cower in fear. That was not the first or the last time my life was threatened. I've spent part of every day from the time I have conscious memory figuring out how to stay safe and recover from the aftermath of the actions of my perpetrators. I know what it's like to feel helpless and hopeless, and that's a special kind of hell that's very familiar to other survivors. The beauty is, I no longer feel traumatized. I feel empowered. I developed unshakable determination to limit the power of the abusers in my life and not just survive, but go from victim into victor. And by the way, I kicked all the abusers out of my life forcefully. My mental toughness was born of pain, injury, suffering, and a determination to heal. Having my life threatened multiple times was just the tip of the iceberg or a drop in the bucket of my trauma. But instead of living in misery, I developed that unshakable determination, that resilience to limit the power of the abusive people in my life. And my mental toughness was born of pain, injury, and suffering, and a desire, unrelenting desire to heal. My life every day is filled with intentional, positive possibility thinking about how I can make my life better and help others, especially survivors. Part of how I do this is by continually and purposefully creating happy, pleasant experiences that are soothing to my mind, body, and senses. It reduces time spent in negative habits of thought that can be perpetuated with trauma. I work daily at rewiring my brain by taking advantage of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to heal and create new neurons. Nerves that fire together, wire together. Neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy have helped me overcome trauma very dramatically. These techniques strengthen my resilience and create new neural pathways. And this is how you can do it also. By repeating positive experiences and emotions, that firing and wiring, through visualization. And taking the time to truly embody, feel it in your body, positive emotions and postures. And engaging your body to create new emotional states. You can kind of fake it till you make it, and then create a whole new life and reality. I took a workshop with a man named Clyde Ford. He wanted us to be observant of our clients and what emotions we saw in them. He had us close our eyes and ask us to show with our bodies what it was like to feel sadness and depression. Everyone assumed a posture. And then he had us open our eyes and see how people were standing. Universally, we saw heads down, eyes down, faces frowning. Their shoulders were rounded and hunched forward. Breathing was restricted, and it was high in the chest. It was obvious that we all knew how to embody sadness and depression. Of course, he didn't want us to stay that way. He then asked us to close our eyes and embody joy. This time, when we looked up, everyone had a smile on. Eyes were brighter and looking directly at others. Shoulders were not rounded, but up and in line with proper posture. Breathing was fuller and in the abdomen as well as the chest. Wow, this shirt felt better. The difference in the feeling in the room, the vibration, was palpable between the two postures. Other research validates the body influences the emotions. I learned about how in several studies they used the body to create or embody an emotional state. In one study, people who were clinically depressed were told to look in the mirror and smile at themselves for 20 minutes a day. That was probably painful. Even the fake smile that they pasted on their face eased symptoms of depression and over time made them feel genuinely happier. It created different brain activity. After 1 month, every participant said they no longer felt clinically depressed. Another study showed that faking a smile with a full grin, engaging the eyes, created greater feelings of happiness. And yet another smile study made the participants fake a smile by placing a chopstick in their mouth, which mimics the muscle posture of a smile. This actually lowered the heart rate levels of participants who, after the fake smile, performed a stressful activity. Study after study shows that smiling during times of stress reduces the effects of stress on the body and actually makes you feel happier. Multiple corresponding studies in frowning showed that it created unhappy emotions just by frowning, even if you didn't feel that way initially. Another frown study that involved placing heat on the forearms of subjects, with one set of participants frowning and the other had a neutral facial expression. The frowners reported feeling more pain from the heat. So just by changing their face into a frown, it changed how they perceived pain. It appears to create a feedback loop that works both directions, meaning frowning can create unhappy feelings, smiling can create happy feelings, not just that we frown when we're sad or smile when we're happy. Assuming or embodying the posture of an emotion can create or strengthen that emotion. You try it. I'd like you to try looking in the mirror or having someone else observe you and see what emotions you embody with your posture. Begin making postures consistent with how you feel. Take the time to embody ease, comfort, and joy. A belief that you absolutely can change your life into a better, more satisfying one is a vital foundation for your healing and growth. So let me talk about what we just covered. The overpowering emotions most common to trauma survivors and how to get out of them. And the beginning of my trauma breakthrough in the class where the instructor had me visualize a different outcome to my trauma while he held a hand over my heart. And how your posture affects your emotions, not the other way around. And how I defied a gunman at the mall with the ferociousness in my voice and posture. And how to do mental rehearsal with emotions, because it's just like having the actual experience. So you can program your mind for success. I've just shared multiple ways to engage the mind and body to reframe traumatic memories with visual imagery. I suggest that if you use these techniques, that you have a support person with you to talk you through it if you need help during the process. This could be a trusted friend or a mental health counselor. I want you to recognize that you can heal and live the life you want to. I hope that this has been a very positive effect for you and that you'll share it with other brave trauma survivors to help them in their journey. And now, as promised, here is the TFT tapping technique to help you get out of trauma experiences. When I'm experiencing disempowering emotions like trauma, I immediately focus on my breathing by taking a few deep, slow breaths. And then I do thought field therapy tapping. This technique was developed by Roger Callahan, a PhD psychologist, and has proven effective by many studies that are scientific. It's based on traditional Chinese medicine and the energy meridians in the body that have also been documented as accurate and valid. Even though I have read people trying to discredit the value of this technique, thought field therapy, I've found them immediately helpful in reducing the intensity of my negative emotions. Energy meridians have been used for 5,000 years in traditional Chinese medicine, and modern imaging has documented that they do exist. Research on thought field therapy shows that a single treatment can last a lifetime. However, it can be repeated whenever you want, and it works in about 80% of the people on the first try. It's also endorsed by the National Registry of Evidence-Based Practices as an effective treatment. Don't worry, I'll be recording a separate video with the long-form algorithm for this TFT trauma exercise. Many people listen while they're commuting, and you won't be able to absorb this fully. So we'll do the abbreviated form here, and you can go back and do the whole thing when you get a chance. When I'm experiencing immediate trauma, like I get a startle in traffic or something, I use this technique. And sometimes if I have to, like somebody's nearly hit me, I'll pull over and do it so that I don't create an accident with the distraction of being in an immediate fight or flight response. So here's what I do. I take 3 deep breaths, and then I go into my thought field therapy trauma tapping. So what you want to do is called tune. You're going to tune into your feeling state. So identify the undesirable emotion that you want to change, like anxiety, depression, fear, whatever it is you want to change. And get into that state of how you feel it. But don't go full on into it, like don't get yourself pumped up to a 10. Just embody it enough to know how bad it feels on a scale of -10, so a -10 to 0, which 0 is neutral. By starting with a -10 and going to a neutral 0, and then on up to a +10, it gives us 20 points of possible improvement available. So, again, you're going to rate the feeling of how you feel that emotion now, and then write it down, and then do the algorithm once, and then rate it again. And if it's not up to a +4, you just keep repeating it until you are. And then if you want, you can keep going. I've worked with clients who have increased 18 points of improvement in one session. Have you ever had that kind of result with talk therapy, where you had that much positive change? I haven't. And with each repetition, you're going to rate and measure it and write it down. So you measure your progress, because you'll forget it. You'll forget how bad it felt in the beginning when there's such an immediate change. So let's do this together. This is the complex trauma with guilt, stress, anxiety, and it's our tapping algorithm. So we start with the psychological reversal point. It's also called the karate chop point. It's where you see karate masters chop boards in half. It's between the wrist and the base of the pinky finger on the side. You get the picture. So you can tap this 15 times or more to balance energy meridians and emotions. Sometimes our energy meridians get reversed and run backwards, and this creates weakness and the opportunity for emotional and physical decline. And there's no detriment if you tap the psychological reversal point when your meridians are in balance. So this is the abbreviated version, as I mentioned, and I'll show the long form in a separate video. So we use the index finger and the middle finger. They're close together, so they're touching, and we use that to tap. So the first point is on the inner edge or corner of the eyebrow by the bridge of the nose, and we tap 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next point is under the eye, directly under the colored part on the bone. Tap lightly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next is under the arm. It's about a fist length under the armpit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go to the collarbone where it begins near the middle or sternum, and it's at the bottom edge. Tap 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next is on the little finger. It's on the inside edge nearest the ring finger near the nail bed. Tap 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we do it again. Inner eyebrow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Under the eye, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Under the arm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Collarbone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Little finger, inside edge, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now rate how you're feeling with that emotion that you were going to change right now. Has the number gone up from the negative scale into the positive side? If not, do this several more times until it goes at least up to a positive 4. And then we're going to do one more algorithm. This one is on the index finger. It's on the outside edge near the middle finger at the nail bed. And we tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're back to the bottom edge of the collarbone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back to the index finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the collarbone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now rate the number again. What's your number? So the first thing that comes to mind is accurate. Don't think too much about it. It's not hard. And if you haven't got up to the positive scale, tap the karate chop point again and rate it and repeat it. I use this tapping frequently, and it will work for you too. You can't overdo it, and use it whenever you need to get your anxiety, trauma responses reduced. And that's thought field therapy for trauma. Please take time to look at my website for trauma survivors. It's fromvictimintovictor.org. And you'll also find many empowerment resources on my speaking website. My name is Phoenix.com. Phoenix is spelled Phoenix. I'm honored to be your personal empowerment guide on your very own action adventure production, your life. I trust that if you actually apply the principles you learned today, your life will be more manageable and fun. Because if it isn't fun, find another way to do it. If you find value and benefit from the information and stories I share, please tell your friends and be sure to like and subscribe or follow me so more people can find my content and make their own lives better. Incidentally, it takes hours to prepare an informative video or audio worth listening to or watching. So please consider making a small donation for the time I spent preparing this with you. Also, find out how to get exclusive content with a membership at the clickable link below. It's my Patreon account. Thanks for listening, and remember, it's your life. Live it, love it.